Hi everybody, and thanks for joining me today. Continuing to finish this 7th pass. I believe it'll be 242,000 stitches, and so I'm about 560 stitches off of that. Won't finish that today, but we'll be getting there soon. I'm not quite starting at 0 because I had some tech issues, which I think is the 2nd time in a row. I swear I know somewhat of what I'm doing, but anyway, there we go. Try again. So the job is going well so far. Like I said, I am catching on pretty good. And the time goes quickly because there's quite a lot to do. It's kind of busy, so that is one benefit, kind of. By the time I look up at the clock, it's like 2 hours have passed, and it didn't feel like it. Which is always nice, right? Definitely don't want it to be the other way. And so I'm getting my steps in because while it is office work, there's quite a lot of like physical filing and such. So there's quite a lot of getting up to pull files and put them back and walk over to the fax machine and that sort of thing. So I was saying that maybe I need to get a smartwatch because normally my step counter is my phone, but when I'm at work, obviously my phone is not on me, so it can't register the steps I'm doing. Because I just downloaded a little, what do you call it? A little free app that will count your steps if you're physically carrying your phone, which normally if I go for a walk, I would be, as I'm using it to listen to a podcast or an audiobook or whatever. And it's not perfect, but it gives me some idea of how much I've been active. And so I would be curious to know how many steps I would get at work, because I was feeling it. And not in like a sore way, but just by the end of the day, I could tell I had been walking around more than usual, because when I'm at home, I'm sure you can guess that I do quite a lot of sitting down and stitching. So, yeah, I was just thinking that when we bought my son's vehicle last year, I think they gave us a smartwatch as part of the promotion. They gave a jacket with the dealership's name on it, and 3 months free to subscription to satellite radio, and I believe a smartwatch, little extras. And I don't think anyone's using it, so maybe I have to see if I can find it somewhere so I could get a record of how much more exercise I'm getting. It was funny, one of my friends said she was kind of digging around in the bottom of her washer to get all the clothes out because she had a top loading machine and she's kind of short, so it was harder for her to reach the bottom, so she had to sort of dig at it a bit. And then she said all the waving her arm around, the the smartwatch thought she'd done some high impact aerobic workout. She said, well, I'll take it, you know. My husband doesn't have a smartwatch, but he does have a watch that has some smart features on it or whatever. Like it's got Bluetooth connectivity, stuff like that. Okay, so I'm gonna put that right here. It's really only long enough to do that one stitch that it's parked in. I'm gonna start another thread. I said 242 even, but I actually cheated a little bit. And I did 2 stitches in the next pass just because of the way the color was. I just did 2 stitches below my cutoff line, which I don't normally do. But, oh, hang on a sec. I'm gonna actually look ahead here. Yeah, I will probably just use separate threads then. I will decide when I get there, as I usually do. I plan ahead somewhat, but not that far ahead because I'd rather be stitching than sitting there planning. So far, they're happy with me at work and I am happy with the work, so. And I said it's probably a temporary position, but that is fine. I wasn't really looking, but when the opportunity came along, I thought, you know, why not? All right, so hang on a sec. I'm just gonna check. I have 2 threads, sort of one on each side. They're both kind of a decent length. So sometimes when I do that, I will just tie off one because I think both of them could sort of handle the stitches that were there. So I'm going to do these stitches with this thread, and I think I'm going to end off this thread, and then I will carry on with the other one. So my husband and son are happily watching Top Gear right now. That's a show they both love about cars. And it's kind of funny because it's been on different streaming services, but not the whole show. So there was some, when we were subscribed to Prime a couple years ago, it had like seasons 10 and on, and then on Tubi we found like seasons 4 to 6 or something. So yeah, now it's on Netflix, I believe, is where they're watching, and still nothing from season 1. I think it's season 2 or something. I said maybe one day you'll have seen them all, but it's kind of funny that no service has the whole thing. I talked about before, I was too cheap to have more than one streaming service, but our TV company put out a new bundle that was like maybe $5 more a month than what we were already paying just for Disney. So at that point, I kind of said, yeah, we can't turn that down. For $5 more, we might as well at that point, because then we get Prime and Disney and Netflix and a bunch of channels from the TV provider too. So it was too good a deal for me to want to pass up. This big section of color, I'm going to kind of split it up a little bit just because it's kind of ragged on both sides. And sometimes I will choose to do differently. It just really depends on my mood at the time, is often the biggest factor. All right, if I recall correctly, this one was just long enough for that one stitch, and this other one to the left was the one I was going to carry on with. That is correct. I did recall correctly. I'm going to do this one stitch here, even though it does kind of close in the one above it a little bit, but not on all four sides, which is the one thing I always try to avoid the most. Because I want to do all of these kind of in one go. So either way, I would have closed it in doing these stitches or closed in doing that stitch, so really doesn't matter. Kind of 6 of one and half dozen of the other, as they say. I was not happy. My iPhone alarm didn't really go off for like my second day of work. I was fortunate because I used my phone to play brown noise at night to help me sleep. It drowns out other noises that might wake me up better than earplugs. So that's what I use. And when my alarm goes off, the video stops playing, obviously. But it's also supposed to vibrate and make an actual alarm sound, and it didn't. And I said, fortunately, I'm sensitive enough that the sound of the brown noise cutting out woke me up, but I was not happy because I checked and I had my haptics on, and I had, so I'm gonna do this one over like this. I had my haptics on, I had a sound assigned, but it didn't work, so I said, it's a good thing I'm not a heavy sleeper, or that would have been not good. I mean, imagine showing up late on like your third day, right? Oh. So I had another device that I put a backup alarm on, so 2 alarms going off. But I was not very happy about that. It's funny, I remember seeing an article about alarms for people who are hard to wake up. And there was one guy who invented one that the bed would actually tip the person out onto the floor. But there was one I remember I saw in a mail order catalog somewhere that like literally would take off. It had propellers and fly around your room, so you were forced to actually physically get out of bed to stop it from beeping. Oh. Apparently, I used to be a deeper sleeper when I was a kid, but I'm totally not now, unfortunately. I'm going to park that there for now. I'll figure that out later, what I want to do. All right, so I'm going to do this one stitch here and tie off that thread so that I have one less short one to deal with. Oops, I hate when that happens. I don't know what happened here. Oh, I must have got a knot or something. Look at that. What a piece of junk. Yeah, it is snarled back here. Okay, that is why. Because only one thread came up and it must have knotted back up when I was doing that. No problem. And I'm not pin stitching in this square because the edge is right there. I don't want any ends showing through. I'm careful with that, but there's always one or two when my project is finished that I have to turn it over and double check and tuck them all back into the center so that they don't show up. 37. There is some bigger blocks here, but it's a little bit confetti heavy for the moment. But I think as the session goes on, I should be able to gain some ground. Less than 70,000 stitches in total are left. Okay. Yeah, the shading here is pretty subtle. Not much difference between these purples. Sometimes I find, especially when I'm up close, I really can't see the difference, but I guess when you step back and get the full effect, yeah, then you can. Kind of working down to here, and then we'll fill in that last row of squares, and then it will be time to start the next pass. Woohoo! The 8th out of 9. I think this color is done for this section. Although, actually, now that I think about it, no, it's not quite. Some of these colors may actually be at the start of the next pass because there is some flowers there. So I may not pack any colors away at the moment until after this pass is done, and then I will look through the beginning of the next pass and see if the colors in my tray are going to be used a lot or not. If they are not, then I'll pack them away. My working tray has, I think, about 30 spaces. And as there's 90 colors in the project, obviously I can't have all the colors out at once, so I try to use the tray for the ones I'm using the most in the area I'm currently working. I usually don't have all 30 slots full either. If this was a max color, I probably would, but I don't plan on doing any of those. I kind of learned my lesson with my one project that's 150 colors. That is That's been enough for me. From now on, I'm going to stick to the standard 90 to 100. I find that that is plenty for my taste. Almost wanted to form a knot. Right, this is a short little piece. Which is why I parked it in this kind of one stitch that's sticking out at the top by itself. I have a long list of shows. I'd have people say, you should watch this, it's on Netflix. And I literally was keeping a list. I know people will say, oh, it's on my list, but they don't actually have a list. But I was actually keeping a list on my phone. So I have a very long queue now. It may take me a while to get to it, but if somebody recommends something to me, I will try it. I had a friend recommended Prison Break to me years ago. Like, I think my son was in kindergarten, kind of. And we finally watched it a couple years ago because it was on Disney Plus once we subscribed to that. So it took a while, but I did get around to it. And I did tell her, I finally watched Prison Break, and you were right, we loved it. She said, oh, I knew you would like it. She understands. She's like me. She may take a while to get to something, but she will get to it. I often don't recommend stuff to other people, though, because I don't know why. I will recommend stuff, and they have no interest in watching it. And then I get my feelings hurt, you know. Because I don't recommend something blanket to everyone. I do tailor my recommendations. I won't recommend something, pardon me, that's like really gory if I know that you're very squeamish. Then I'm not going to recommend something that would gross you out. I do tailor my recommendations, but I don't know. I've had a few times. Somebody said, I'm the opposite of a gatekeeper. If I like something, I will be annoying and trying to get you to like it too. And it's like, if you try it and you don't like it, I won't be offended. But I get kind of frustrated when I remember I wanted to share a movie with a friend, and she wanted to watch this one first. So we did. And I'm like, okay, then when we watch this one, I think you'll like it. Oh, let's watch this first. And like, I brought it over half a dozen times, and there was always an excuse. So I gave up. Oh, I'm sure I'll like it, but never wanted to watch it. If you don't want to watch it, just tell me. Nah, I'm not interested. I'll survive. I think it's just when people say that they will, but they have no intention of actually trying it, that's what bothers me. Because like I said, I won't recommend something that I don't think you'll like. There's been a few times when somebody has said, I tried it, but it wasn't my thing. But most of the time people will say, oh, I tried it and I should have listened to you sooner. It was so good. My husband is guilty of that. He doesn't want to try something, and often he'll only start watching it because he'll catch some of it when I'm watching it. Because it was that way with Murdoch Mysteries. That's one of my favorite shows. It's actually the ringtone on my phone. And I said, I think you'll enjoy this because your brain works a lot like his does. You're the tinkerer who always comes up with figures out ways to do things, because on that show, it's set in the late early 1900s. And he's a detective, and he creates machines and things. He uses science to... Basically, he uses kind of forensics before forensics was really a thing. At that time, we were just starting to get into fingerprinting, but he made a metal detector once. He made, what was it? He worked with, they always have, what you might call it, real historical figures. They will often write the character in. So he had Alexander Graham Bell was helping him to remove background noise from a recording so they could hear, or the foreground noise so they could hear what was in the background, something like that. It was fun. So I told my husband, you'll like this. This is your kind of stuff. And no, he doesn't want to watch it. Okay, fine. So I watch it myself, and I think I was in season 9 when he started going, actually, maybe this is interesting. I'm like, I told ya. But you wouldn't listen. Same thing for Hell on Wheels. He's getting better about it now, because I'm not going to recommend, like I said, girly stuff that I don't think he's going to like. Although he has enjoyed Pride and Prejudice. The 1995 A&E edition with Colin Firth and Jennifer Ely. He enjoyed that. And I didn't try to get him to watch it. It was my birthday, and I was binging it, and he was there but working on something else. And then I finished episode 2, and I was going to go get something to eat, and he says, oh, are we going to put on the next one? I said, I thought you weren't watching this. He said, it got interesting. So I tried, I could have told you that, but my whole family loved that adaptation, and I've read the book a few times. Yeah, somebody said when it came out, it must have been so revolutionary. This story about a poor woman who this fabulously rich guy proposes to her, and she basically tells him to stuff it. Which, of course, is why the character himself is so shocked. And then he actually has to prove himself worthy of her. He considered her kind of, you're beneath me, but I'm so in love with you that I will lower myself to propose marriage. And then, to his shock, discovers that his social standing and wealth is not enough for her. She wants to marry for love. And so he has to become worthy of that. I remember a few years ago they had this meme going around of therapist says something, patient replies, and the therapist says no. So they had one where it was therapist, what do we say? And Darcy says, I love you in spite of myself. And then therapist, no. I find that fun because Darcy doesn't seem to understand at first why that was so insulting. That he basically says, yeah, you're way below me, and I'd be lowering myself to marry you, but I love you in spite of all that. Will you marry me anyway? It's completely shocked when she, like I said, tells him to stuff it. because I think I did the inflation calculator, and like his 10,000 pounds a year would be like $1 million in at least Canadian money a year. So I could see why he was shocked that she turned him down, especially considering her family situation, that once her father passed, they would lose their home. Of course, also why Mr. Collins was so shocked that she wouldn't marry him either. For exactly that reason, because most women would. For the good of the family, in those days, would have. Yeah. Jennifer Ely, who played Elizabeth Bennet, she's actually a natural blonde, so it's kind of funny because she had to wear a wig for that, a dark wig for that part. Actually, most of the actors wore wigs, but anyway. So I've seen her sometimes in other stuff thinking, she looks familiar, who is that? And I have to look at them and, oh, duh, it's the blonde hair throws me off. Yeah, very few people in that production, it was their natural hair. The actress who played Jane, it was hers, and that's why she was the only one you saw. Her hair was wet, she just washed it, and she was combing it out in front of the fire to dry it. But pretty much everyone else, it was wigs. They do that a lot for the British historical productions. Well, I suppose because putting your hair into those styles every day would be very time consuming, as opposed to putting wigs on people. Because with hair and makeup and stuff, sometimes people spend several hours before they even start filming, right? That would definitely not be a job for me. I like my sleep too much. Another square will be filled in. Okay, so I'm past 100 because I started at 10 because I had some issues, but now we are past 100 on camera. Was off. There we go. August has been warmer so far, but still not too hot. At least not in comparison to some places. But when we went back to BC, Lower Mainland, to visit family last month, I had forgotten how much the humidity affects me, because it felt stickier at a much lower temperature. When we would go to Vancouver Island to visit my grandmother when she was still with us, we would stay overnight, and the humidity from the ocean my gosh, my back, it would hurt so much. I swear it felt like I could feel every single joint in my spine when I woke up. It was not good. I've gotten used to it out here in the prairies where it's dry. I didn't expect it to make that much of a difference, but it does. Alrighty. Pardon me, my goodness. Oh, that's no good. No, that is no good. Usually I'm better at dragging this across the back from the front, but sometimes some days it just doesn't want to work well. I will just ducked my head underneath. I could flip it over, but on camera it's kind of a pain to get everything back lined up nicely, so I don't like to flip my work while I'm filming. Let's see. All right, get a full length piece here. As I can see, it carries on into the next pass. Oh, pardon me. Hoping to reach 80% by the end of August, but we will see what happens. So I did that one there so that I can kind of do both these stitches here and it wouldn't close in the one above it. I can do both one after the other, and then I don't have to change threads quite as often. I used to sort of be more strict about that, but I've kind of relaxed it a bit over time. Grid line. Kind of getting in my way. I'm just gonna, there, tuck them under my magnet there and keep them out of my way. Sometimes if they're really bothering me, I'll just cut them because I don't really need them anymore. So I'll just sort of trim it close to the fabric and not worry about it. Because like I said, I'm done stitching in this area, so I don't really need them, but I do tend to just leave them to the end and remove them all at once. Some people prefer to remove the gridding as they go if it's sewn on. Totally up to you. There's a teeny little knot in that one. Yeah, and unfortunately it's going to want to show up on the right side, isn't it? Okay. I'm going to just pin stitch it down here. Forces the knot to stay on the back there. It uses up a little bit on the back, but it would probably use up the same amount to end the thread and restart it to avoid the knot. So, and as I said, it's so thin that I can't even feel a bump, so I did it that way. Okay, bigger block coming up here, so like I said, that will help me to put up a pretty good number. I've done that. All right. Oh, there we go. I was trying to park it there. My double tap must have been too slow. Browsed ahead a bit in the pattern, and it looks like I will be getting a few zeros in the next pass. But of course, whoops, most of them will be in the last one. I think I have done about a dozen zeros now, something like that. Those are always satisfying. could continue to do the next row after this one, but I'll probably switch colors because that kind of forces me to take a break. I find even just the mini break of stopping to switch colors and stuff keeps me from straining my muscles, because I have to be careful. I once stitched an area that was only 2 or 3 colors, and I got a ton done, but then I couldn't stitch for like 3 days afterwards because my forearms were burning. I learned my lesson. So I said I didn't really make any extra progress. I stitched as much as I would in 3 days, but then I couldn't stitch for 3 days, so it kind of worked out all the same, and I'd rather not hurt myself, right? That would be unlikely that it's any permanent damage, but hey, avoid pain when you can. Try not to hurt yourself if you can possibly help it. All right, that goes there. So finish that big square above is done. Could stitch this color next, but I'm actually going to stitch a row or 2 of this one, because like I said, trying to break up that big block so that I don't cause muscle strain to myself. Ooh, that came undone. Okay. So I will do this next row because I need to tie off this thread and start a new one, and that kind of breaks up the repetitive motion enough that it doesn't get sore, I find. Stopping to pull a new thread and put it in the needle and stuff kind of uses the muscles a little differently, and at least for me, it does make a difference. I think by the next time I stitch with you all, I will be working on the next pass. Less than 400 to go, so that seems likely. may end up a little bit. Just make it go back. There. Oh yeah, I'm gonna blast right past 200 here, no prob. I think once I do this row, that'll be where I call it a day. All right, 210. So I actually did exactly 200 on camera with you guys. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you here next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.